Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast, where each week we speak with brands, icons, innovators, and trailblazers within the fly fishing industry, exploring both the successes and failures they've encountered along the way to become who they are today. But first, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast or joined our email list, please do so by going to the flyfishinginsiderpodcast.com, or you can also find us on Instagram at Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Now let's begin. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Today our guest is Brett Zundel. Brett is the co-owner for Loon Outdoors. Loon Outdoors is a forward-thinking brand with a strong focus on conservation of fish, fishermen, and fisheries. They make everything from tackle to tools, all with a sustainable and non-toxic focus. Here today to tell us more about Loon Outdoors is Brett Zundel. Brett, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Greg.
Yeah, super excited you're here, Brett. Loon Outdoors, you guys are doing so well over there. I want to get into all that, but before I do, why don't you tell me a bit about who Brett is?
Oh, man. Who Brett is? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is I am married. We just celebrated our 11th year of marriage. I have 3 young kids, 2 daughters who are 8 and 5, and then a son who will be 3 in October.
Yeah, you're busy.
Indeed.
So with all that, how much time do you have for fishing?
Man, not enough. This time of year, I get away a little bit more than other times of the year. But with that, I should ask, if I'm going to give you an accurate question, can I expand fishing to include more than throwing flies?
Of course you can.
Okay, then I get out of a little bit more. We have a lake here close by that my kids are pretty excited about fishing and trying to catch some bass and some crappie and some bluegill, and so that's pretty fun. But in terms of getting out and fly fishing, it's really limited to probably 4 trips a year, and I try and get those in and save those in the calendar, and they wind up being pretty special times. But my time fishing is not what somebody who dreams about being in the fly fishing industry would imagine it to be.
I fully agree with you on that. How many times I've missed fishing to stick around and do some editing and do some, MailChimp newsletters that where you could be fishing. No, I get it. So definitely. But
it's funny. We're frequently asked by people who, are looking for a job in the fishing industry and trying to get clear about why they want to work in the fly fishing industry. And a lot of times it becomes apparent that they just love fishing, and that's awesome. But I think that the thing that I've seen more and more is that when people get into a job that has to do with fly fishing, I don't think that they fish any more than they would if they were doing something else. So I think the people that I know that fish the most own a coffee shop, or they are waiting tables at night so they can fish during the day. And so the people I know who get the most time on the water oftentimes have nothing to do with fishing with their day job.
I 100% agree with that, Brett. The fastest way to get out of fishing is starting a fishing business. So definitely. So.
We have some friends that have a ski tool company, Sun Valley Ski Tool, and my partner Alan was talking to the owner over there about how the company got started, and he had the foresight to start a ski tool company because he loves fishing, and so fly fishing was his passion. So he started a ski tool company, and I think that guy fishes a ton, but it's only because he kind of went the opposite direction, thinking I'll be super busy in the winter, be available in the summer, and that's how I want it. So it's funny, but I do think that's a common misconception.
In that conversation, you mentioned your partner Alan.
Yeah.
So both you and Alan own Loon Outdoors. Can you tell us how that? Can you walk the listeners through how that all started for you guys?
Sure. So I'll start back with day one of Loon Outdoors, which had nothing to do with Alan or me, but will help you to kind of understand where Loon has come from and how we've got to where we're at today. So 1991, the gentleman who started Loon Outdoors, his name was Dan Paradis. He, as the story goes, was fishing and just thought, man, there has to be a better way to do this. And so Dan was, by all accounts, a great, great, great guy. To this day, I still meet so many people who knew Dan, called Dan a friend, and worked with Dan. And I have never heard anything but the highest praise for Dan. He was, I think, as much of a birder as he was an angler, but he worked to his day job was that he was a chemical engineer at an aerospace company, and he was fishing. He just thought, man, there has to be a better way to do this, and looked at the tackle and looked at the accessories, the chemicals, the weights, and all of that stuff, and thought there has to be a way that we can develop products that aren't going to compromise the health of the rivers and streams, that aren't going to leave anything toxic behind. And I think he was especially concerned about the waterfowl. So I think he just looked at it and thought, man, I have the skills.
Yeah.
I think I could do this. And so started tinkering away and developed a pretty small sampling of products that grew into what is now known as Loon Outdoors. So some of the stuff that we still sell and still do really, really well with were some of those original products, the lead-free tungsten putty that's used as a weight, some of those floatants, some of the raw materials have changed just a little bit, but some of Dan's original work is still alive and well in our product line and still sold all over the world. So Dan started Loon Outdoors and got things up and running. Would have been about 15 years ago. Alan, who was Dan's brother-in-law, started working for Loon, and oddly enough, started working for Loon literally the exact same day that Dan got, all of a sudden, completely out of the blue, got really, really sick. And unfortunately, it turned out to be terminal, and he went into a coma and this is kind of the sad and longer part of the story. But yeah, it was a completely unforeseen and really unfortunate turn for the company and for Dan and his family. And so it was a really sad time at Loon. It was also a really chaotic time at Loon too, because it was a small enough business that a lot of Dan's knowledge went with him. And so Alan had just started at Loon, and it honestly, the timing, looking back, as wild as it was that he started literally the same day that Dan got sick and went to the hospital, it's hard to not see there's being some kind of providence for that, in that Alan really was able to step in, having no experience in the fly fishing industry and not even really much experience fishing, able to step in and help make sense of all of the great things that were still happening at Loon and all of the resources that were available and all of the potential that was there, and to help things keep moving forward. And so that was, I mean, if it wasn't for Dan, Loon obviously doesn't exist. If it wasn't for Alan, I don't think Loon would have made it past Dan's passing. So Alan deserves all the credit in the world for keeping Loon afloat, but then also getting it back on the right track after a completely surprising and unforeseen transition. And then about 10 years ago, I started working with Alan, and his partner at the time wanted to sell their shares a couple years later. And so we decided it would be a good way to go. And that's how I took the step from employee to partner with Alan.
Awesome. You know what? Such a good history there. Like you said, it's an emotional history, but let's focus on Alan for a second here, and let's focus on the fact that here's this guy that gets his business and this brand, and he's relatively new, like his first day relatively new to the business on his first day. But how did he manage to keep the brand's focus on track and not get sidetracked from what was originally started? Could you imagine that?
Oh man, well, I think so. Alan and Dan, just to clarify what Alan did and did not come into that position with. Alan went out to breakfast with Dan that first morning that he was working, right before. I mean, I cannot stress enough that this is literally like happening at the exact same time. Dan left this breakfast to go to the hospital, but Dan was just bringing Alan up to speed on the fly fishing industry. And he has this yellow legal pad and he goes, all right, here's what you need to know about the fly fishing industry. And he writes down Sims and Sage. And then he gets up and walks away and says, I'm just not feeling that well. And so that is literally all Alan knew about the fly fishing industry going into it was Sims and Sage. He knew those two brands, didn't know what they made, didn't know anything about them. And that was all he knew. So it's crazy to think about that. But the thing with Alan is, man, you will not meet somebody who is, more organized, who has more integrity, who is, Alan is, he's had a billion chances, and every time he has done right by me as his partner and as a friend. And so he is just the best person to run a business with. And he is also the most organized person I know. And so for him to take over a brand like Loon, he was really the perfect candidate because he could come in and do what he does, being a total straight shooter, and make decisions, being able to stay organized and stay on track, see what needs to be done, implement new systems that helped to eliminate waste in terms of man hours and dollars at a time when neither were in real high supply. So
I'm gonna stop you there because I want to talk about that because, here's this guy. He literally knew two things in the fly. Alan literally knew two things in the fly fishing industry: Simpson Sage. Knowing those two things, do you think Alan's replicated his business model based on those two mega brands, or do you think Alan's been heavily influenced, and Loon as a brand has been influenced by those two brands as well?
I kind of think the exact opposite. I think that
Okay.
Alan came into the fly fishing industry, and I think this is something that's so interesting about fly fishing is that you've got so many people in this industry at all levels, whether you're talking about shop owners or manufacturers, who are trying to monetize their passion in a way. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all, because that's amazing if somebody is able to take their
Of course,
passion for fishing and make a living doing it. But I think in some ways, Alan, knowing very little about fly fishing, put him in a spot where he didn't really have time to look around and see, to try and keep up with the Joneses and what the other brands were doing. I think he just has a very keen sense of business and is very practical. And so rather than having his understanding of what needed to be done be clouded by what other big brands are doing, I think he was able to come in and implement new practices and make some decisions that I don't know if somebody else who was more passionate, or maybe even somebody who's more experienced in the industry would make, because I think that there were some pitfalls that he avoided just because he was able to steer clear of some things that were trending in the industry but weren't necessarily healthy for businesses. And so I think the opposite. I don't think he looked at those brands and thought, I've got to do exactly what they're doing. I think he looked at the business in general and was able to be really practical and really wise about decisions that he made and do what was best for Loon rather than do what was best for other brands.
You mentioned about pitfalls and whatnot. What pitfalls? Can you give us an example of few industry pitfalls that might have been taking place at that time for the brand? If you know any, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but yeah.
Sure. So no, if you were to, Alan would kind of shake his head a little bit if he or when he hears you say that Loon wouldn't be around if it wasn't for him. But he would say that Loon would have struggled to survive if we would have kept a retail storefront open that was existing when he first took over at Loon. So there was a storefront that was in front of what was then our warehouse in Boise, and it was all Loon products and stuff that would shock most people to find out that we ever made. But everything that you would find in a typical fly shop was sold, but it was all Loon branded. So it was
rods and reels and stuff.
Oh man, that was just the tip of the iceberg. It was rods and reels. It was waders, packs, wading boots, flies, leader, tippet, fly lines, everything. And it was all Loon branded. And it's still, every once in a while, I'll see somebody with some of that stuff on the water. And it's pretty cool to see. Because a lot of it was good stuff. It was, but as you can imagine, it was a sourcing nightmare to do small runs of all
How many years ago did you guys have that storefront?
Oh man. It would have been about 15 years ago.
Okay, wow.
And so it presented a couple really unique challenges. The sourcing was one. The staffing of it was another. This was before my time, but Alan tells the story of it didn't make sense it just wasn't busy enough to staff that full time. So you would have, the doorbell ring when somebody walked in, and somebody would have to walk out of the warehouse just, covered in loon dust from filling bottles and having pigment from BioStrike on their hands, and so they're filthy in their Carhartts that they've been mixing chemicals, and they'll walk out and just have to sit and help a customer for 20 or 30 minutes, and it was wildly inefficient. It put us in a unique position in terms of trying to sell stuff to the fly shop down the street, but then also are now a total competitor for them. And the pricing was kind of a funny thing, in that it functioned as a little bit of an outlet store. So Alan would say that trying to keep that storefront, trying to keep that footprint, keep that open, manage all that inventory, that would have sunk Loon. And so that's a really roundabout way to answer your question, or a long-winded way to answer your question of pitfalls. But I think trying to, I guess, not knowing your lane and trying to stay in your lane and do what you do really well, it would be the wisdom. I think the pitfall is to try and expand that lane and try to do too much too fast, and that winds up doing a lot of different things. But it makes it really hard to be consistent with quality. It makes it really hard to tell a consistent story, and it makes it really hard to service those products well.
Yeah, Brett, I could agree more with you. Absolutely. And Alan's hard work and the team at Loon has done extremely well, from the days of trying to sell everything to finding your niche and focusing on it and doing it extremely well, because you guys are known globally. You're worldwide, ship worldwide. You're probably in every country. And here we are, like, you look at this brand and it's just exploded, just due to the leadership that's been going on over there. So as well. So that, congratulations on that. So with saying that, though, what are some of your focuses in that you guys are currently focused on that might not have taken place back then? Particularly, I know you always had a sustainability focus or whatnot, but now you've taken that to like sustainability 2.0 level, if you will.
Yeah. So I think that was a really great lesson for Loon as a brand. And if I can, I'll talk about kind of Loon as a person, or growing as a brand.
Yeah.
For Loon as a brand to learn that lesson and see that, man, this is totally unsustainable for us to do this many products, to try and fill in holes with just kind of cheap knockoff stuff with different tools, or that this is just not the way to grow a brand. I think that was a great lesson for us to learn early on, and that to take a step backwards was really the best way for us to move forward. So to get rid of all that stuff that was that people would be surprised to find out that we ever made, was certainly step one. I think step two was really to look at the stuff that was a lot closer to being in our wheelhouse, but we were just doing the run of the mill, we do that too kind of product, where they were scissors and they were okay, but they weren't great. And they were forceps and they were just fine, but they were just a pair of forceps. And so I think for us, what we have done really well is to establish that we do accessories, and we do chemicals and tools for Streamside and for the Fly Time bench. And we have done a really good job of not reinventing the wheel, but presenting an improvement on what is already existing, and doing it in a unique way, in a way that hopefully solves a problem that other products don't. But also, I would say something that go ahead.
Or it could be better.
What's that?
Or it could be better, right? Or it could be a better
Exactly.
materials, better this, better, a different design. I mean, I use forceps every day in
Right.
nursing, right? And then when I'm done, I throw them out because they're cheap, right? They're medical forceps.
Yeah.
Sometimes I might have a few in my fly box, but you know what? I mean, you throw them out; they're not the best, right?
Sure.
Compared to like forceps that you guys use. So
Sure.
no, I mean, you guys are definitely doing things better. So absolutely.
The other thing I would say too is that we don't view, when we talk about doing something better, we try and take a more holistic view or approach to that, in that we think of how that product is delivered and how that product is serviced, or how we handle warranties. So, some that we do a couple new things, like, for example, we're coming out with a headlamp, and it's awesome. I think it is everything that I would want. What's that?
What's it going to be called?
It's called the Nocturnal Headlamp.
Oh, I like it.
Thanks. It's everything that I want in a headlamp. And as far as I know, it's, the everything from the way the buttons work to the design. I mean, it's all original stuff, and so it's awesome. I mean, could I tell you that it is the best headlamp in the history of the world? Certainly not. But what the reason I bring that up is because I'm stoked on the product. It'll be awesome. But the thing that we do really well beyond making a great product is we deliver it really well. We do a good job of managing inventory and of filling orders quickly and efficiently. And so sometimes I think we will come out with a new product because we recognize this is going to be an improvement on what's existing, but it's also going to be a lot easier for dealers to get. It's going to be backed up by a warranty. And so those two things are just as important as the features or the quality of the product, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does, and I think that's we see it all the time with products that are fantastic and really well thought out, really well made. But if somebody can't figure out how to do the delivery quite right, then it really doesn't matter.
You guys, you talk about the newer products. What else do you have new going on over at Loon?
So it's funny because Loon has historically been known as a floatant company, and people who know Loon from just the fly tying side of things, which has blown up recently, are shocked to find out that is Loon's historical foundation is as a floatant company. But we haven't come out with a new floatant for a few years. And again, it comes back to, we just, until we see a need, we're not just going to keep coming up with new floatants just to come up with new floatants. But we have seen the market start to trend towards guys really wanting to use a dip floatant, and where guys can just submerge a fly, it'll evaporate quickly and waterproof a fly. The hard part with everything that we've seen is that it's all been pretty darn bad for fish and for fisheries. To the raw materials that were used were just not things that we felt great about bringing on the water, certainly leaving in the water. And so we do have a dip floatant that's coming out this year, and man, it is one of those, I do think it is a game changer. It makes a huge difference in the way that a fly can be presented. And it's been in the works for a couple years now, but it is it does everything that you would want it to do. I mean, it really does keep a fly. It changes the presentation of a fly more than any other floatant I've ever fished. And so, man, we are really excited about that. Excuse me. Getting back to the fly tying stuff, we have a new line of colored UV resins that are coming out that will be awesome. I think we've seen guys want more and more of that, and the UV resins have been the trend and where tyers have been headed. And so we've seen other brands do well with that. But again, when we've seen that and we've thought, man, that guys are excited about this, let's try it out. Open up the bottle, and it's just, man, it just smells, and it is apparent that it's not something you want to breathe. It's not something you want to put on your flies. It's not something you'd want kids to tie with. And so we set out to develop something that worked just as well, but didn't have any of those noxious odors or didn't have anything toxic. And so I think we did that. And so I think those are the two things that I'm most excited about, is that dip floatant and then those colored UV resins.
Any new tools for this year?
We do. We have a couple new tying tools. We have some hair stackers that are pretty cool. They're a one-piece hair stacker. So rather than having that barrel that sits inside of something else, it looks like a Zippo lighter, almost like an ergonomic triangular Zippo lighter that you flip open and drop, or I guess I should say you drop your hair in, then you can flip the lid open and remove the hair. We have a hair packer that'll be a nice addition to somebody's bench if they're following the deer spinning hair trend. Excuse me. And then we do have some improvements on our stream side tools. So a new zinger that'll be a nice replacement to our old one. It's just a little bit bigger, a lot sturdier, and will kind of do whatever you want it to do. But yeah, I think the stream side stuff this year, it came down to shoring up what we were already doing and making some improvements, but nothing totally revolutionary on that stream side front beyond, just improving what was already
Which
there.
is always good. I want to go back to the chemicals and what. So getting like in the laboratories, I'm going to call it
Sure.
in laboratories, and we're developing all these, this float and stuff like that. What's the testing process? What's like, walk us through like, because I know like
Yeah.
like you say, and this is what your values and your core values as a company. And what's your testing process, your ethical process on how do how do you go about making these and testing them in a safer environment and then testing them on the water and in a actual environment? Can you walk us through a bit of that?
Man, I absolutely, and that's such a great question. I'll say this. So the product development side of things, it kind of moves forward in a few different ways, but sort of like, like you said in that intro, we are, when we develop something, we're always conscious of fish and fisheries and fishermen, and so we always look at how any product that we make is going to affect those things. And we're also obviously really, really conscious about how a product is going to perform. And so when we see a need or somebody has an idea for a product at Loon, it comes down to starting like kind of trying to look at it from that 30,000 foot view of like, okay, is there a need for this product? And if so, how are we going to develop this? And then are we going to be able to source the raw materials that do what we need them to do, that we feel good about bringing into our warehouse? And once we mix those together, what's that going to do, and what is that going to produce in terms of a product to bring on the water? As how will that affect what's left behind? And so, I guess this is again long-winded, but what I'm trying to say is we really don't move forward with how a product performs until we're confident that it will check all those other boxes off. And so, I don't know, sometimes I think that is, I shouldn't say sometimes, that makes it product development a lot more strenuous. And
Yeah, of course it would. Yeah.
in some ways I feel like, not that we are superheroes, but that, how in a superhero movie, when the villain is like crashing through the city and like flipping over buses and like breaking down
Of
buildings,
course.
and then the superhero has to follow as close behind as they can without doing any of those things and kind of going around the baby stroller and all of that kind of stuff. I think that's how product development at Loon feels, where the to get from A to B and to try and go on that straight line, it just doesn't happen because we run into so many roadblocks that, man, we just don't feel good about bringing that product into the warehouse. Right? Man, we just don't feel good about the way that that product is going to interact with fish, and we just don't feel good about what's left behind and all of that kind of stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is that we will test something. We really will only pursue developing something that we are confident is consistent with honoring all of those other commitments.
No, it's Brett, it's super cool. I mean, I can hear the passion in your voice when you talk about that, and I'm sure you guys have burnt a ton of cash in like saying, "Oh, we've hit a roadblock because it leaves ABC in the water, or it's ABC toxic here, whatever it is." Right? And toxic is probably not a good word to use, but it doesn't align with the focus, right? So I mean, it's so great to hear that you're doing that, and I love the analogy of following the industry, and then you're following behind, but you're also technically you're leading. If I don't know if you see it that way, but I'm, as sitting on this side of the fence, I look at it as Loon is leading the industry in a forward way of doing things and a forward way of thinking in conservation. So what other aspects of conservation are you guys involved with? Perhaps, reaching out. I know you guys are heavily involved with like helping brands out, like helping brands or charities or events and whatnot. What other, as a company, are you guys focused on helping? Can you share a few?
Sure. So, product development is kind of the one that we're known for. But I think the product development, we do our very, 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 very best that we can with all of that stuff. And so I think there's always going to be a place where there's only so much that we can do. So we do our best to support people and organizations that are promoting, health of wild fish, promoting access to wild places, and we do our best. And this is getting a little bit away from the environmental side of things, but we do our best to help organizations that are using fishing as a platform to help people. So whether that's veterans or young kids who haven't had the opportunity to learn how to fish or to learn life skills from a healthy home or family, we do our best to support, whether it's through monetary donations or through product donations, organizations that are getting kids or veterans on the water to try and use fishing as a tool to help them out. And so we just completed the process of getting registered as a participant with 1% for the planet. So 1% of our sales go to towards those causes, and it is something that is so entrenched with who Loon is and what Loon is that at this point it doesn't even seem like a consideration. It's just this is who we are and this is what we do.
Brett, can you share with the listeners some of the names of the charity events that you guys currently are focused on? I know there's quite a few, but just give us one or two of them.
Sure. So like I said, we just finished the joining that 1% for the planet. So we are reevaluating some of our partnerships, but we have supported Trout Unlimited and a lot of local chapters for them for a long time. There's a conservation group in Oregon called the Native Fish Society, and they do a great job, and they have great people with stewarding wild fish and local rivers. And so we do some to help them. We do some work with an organization called Cast Hope, which is an organization in Northern California that one of our employees is really involved with. And they do a great job of getting kids from kind of not great backgrounds on the water.
It's very important. Yeah.
And another one is that is pretty cool. It's called the Mayfly Project. It's one that would be worth checking out because it's a newer one, but their goal is to mentor foster children through fly fishing, and they do a really neat thing.
Definitely. I'll make sure that I put all that into the show notes. So if anyone wants to look further into that. Brett, I want to slow from above and look at the brand as a whole. Get a picture here. So you guys are shipping worldwide. You're in almost every country in the world. You're doing crazy numbers of amazing products. You got a great value in place and sustainability focus. And like I said earlier, fishermen and fisheries. Where do you see the brand in the next 5 years? And where do you see the brand going in the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, like I told you earlier, we learned so many lessons early about the importance of being sustainable in the way that we've grown and being clear about who we are and what we do and our identity in terms of products and how we grow there, that our goal is to continue to do more of the same in terms of, we find it that our sweet spot in terms of our manpower is capable of producing about 5 great products a year. And this year we have a lot more than that. And it was a lot of work, and it'll continue to be a lot of work to roll those out and get those introduced and get those marketed and all of that. So we find that that about 5 new products a year is our sweet spot. And I think that is where we see ourselves, or kind of how we see ourselves continuing to grow is incrementally, and to do it in a way that we feel great about all of those products, and that all of those products are solving a problem, are providing a unique value, and so to ask what we're going to be doing in 5 or 10 years, I see the trajectory we're on as being a really, really healthy one, and I think that is the one that we intend to stay on.
We're still going to focus on tools and tying and flow tints and chemicals and stuff like that. We're not going to start dabbling into reels and rods again, are we?
Yeah, that's we have been approached a couple different times by rod companies or reel companies who that are up for sale, and have been approached, and because they've seen what we've done with the Loon brand, and said, man, it just seems like if you guys could do that same model with this, then that's really what it needs. And so a lot of times we've been approached a couple times, I should say, with a great product, and one that it does seem like what it needs is an infusion of some creativity and some consistency with marketing and storytelling. And I do think that we do a really good
Also
job with
known as
that.
loon dust.
No, loon dust is actually a product, and it's one that is like applied with a brush applicator, but it's one that is frequently spoken of with expletives surrounding it by the guys in the warehouse who really don't like filling those bottles.
There you are.
But the all that is to say, with the rods and reels thing, there's just so many other great brands out there who are dedicating so much into R&D, and who are already devoting so much time and energy into solving the problems that are presented with the existing rod reel market, that I think we look at that and it just makes our head spin, because from where we sit, and from what we know, and from our knowledge, it's just hard to look at that and to see where we could step in and where we could solve an existing problem. I think that would feel it would feel unwise, and from a dollar standpoint, but it almost seems a little bit arrogant too to say, guys who've been doing this forever, step aside, we got this. That is not where we are headed. But I will say this: I spoke about the importance of who Alan is as a person and what he's meant to the company, but I would certainly be remiss to talk about Loon as a brand and as a manufacturer without talking about Matt Calise, who does all of our product development. And in many ways, he has become the face of the brand for all of the fly tying videos that he's done. He hosts Loon Live, which is that live streaming fly tying demo that we do twice a month. And man, that guy, if he gets cut, he bleeds yellow and black. He is the most loyal person I have ever met, and loyal not just to his family and friends, but to business associates, and to people he works with and works for. So I bring him up now to say that our plan is to continue to grow slowly, but that guy is unbelievable in terms of his passion and creativity for fishing and fly fishing. And he's kind of this fishing savant. He knows so much about stuff that, man, very few people know about. And so his ability to crank out unique ideas, creative ideas, supersedes what we can cram into a 5-product release. So I say that is our plan, but with somebody like him, who is as creative as he is and as valuable as he is, I will reserve the right to take an unforeseen but creative turn, just because I know that he will always be pushing the limits with new, creative, unique product ideas.
Cool. Well said. Lots of content there and information. You talked about pushing the limits, and you talked about Loon Live. What are some of the ways you guys are currently pushing the limits in a social world? So let's talk about like Loon Live. Is it going on your Facebook page? Is it going on Instagram? Or is it going on the website? Are these ways that Loon is marketing things socially to get their message across? And why you feel, if you are doing that, why is that so important to the brand?
Oh man, that's a great question. So at the time when, and Loon Live, this is a perfect example. So, Matt does Loon Live, but it was also his idea. And at the time, I don't think anybody else was doing, obviously people have been posting fly tying videos to YouTube since YouTube came on the scene. But the live streaming thing was a pretty unique thing when we first started, and I don't know anybody else that was doing it for fly tying. And so I think what that has done is I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this, but what Loon Live has done is it's positioned us in a way that we are hopefully providing something other than just products, but giving our customers or followers or fans of the brand something that has not real monetary value to us, but is more of just an educational piece and almost just a service to them. And so, a lot of the flies, Matt ties, will use our products. Some of them don't use anything other than he's just using a loon bobbin when he ties them. And so I don't know that we look at Loon Live and think, man, this is such a huge cash cow. We've got to keep doing it. It's more of just a way to interact with fly tyers and the audience. I mean, all over the world, which is such a unique and really cool thing. So I think that has been really important. I think YouTube and the fly tying video thing in general has totally revolutionized the way that guys tie and how, for lack of the better word, how cool fly tying is. When you've got guys who are, man, I think those guys at Fly Fish Food, like Cheech and Curtis, those guys just have funny bones, man. And they are great tyers.
Yeah.
Honestly, I could not even watch them tie and just listen to the nonsense that they are spewing, and it just makes me laugh. But you've got some guys that just tie these super clean flies, and that content, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube, has done such a huge service to fly tyers at all stages of development. And I think that's done a great service to anybody who wants to learn how to tie flies, to have so many resources available to show you how to use tools, to show you how to use materials, to give you unique ideas on how to tie flies. And so to answer your question about what we're doing, I hope we've used those tools well to educate people. But I also think the Instagram especially has given brands a platform that you can do two things. One is to tell a better story, or tell a more complete story about who the brand is and what you stand for. And otherwise, prior to the advent of social media, I think that was just a lot harder to get a message out or to tell a story about who the brand is. But I also think it gives brands an opportunity to curate content that will hopefully inspire people to get out and to fish and to be outside and to do fun things, go on adventures. So I think hopefully we're using all of our social media platforms to do all of those things, from telling stories to educating to inspiring people to get outside a little bit more.
Hopefully, but that's not always the case, Brett.
That is true.
I mean, that's the hopeful wish. So you had a lot of content there. You said a lot, really cleaned it up nicely and summed it up. With that said, what would one thing within the fly fishing industry, what was one thing that you would change within the industry?
Oh man, I think the fly fishing industry is such a unique breed, and I don't know that I can look around and say, man, there's this one thing about fly fishing or about the industry that I think needs to be changed, or it's a pet peeve. It is such a unique blend of, like I said earlier, people who are trying to just take a step closer to doing something that they're passionate about every day. So I don't know that I see one thing that I think, man, this is weighing the fly fishing industry down. I think it is such a unique industry in that it is governed so much by people who are really, really, really passionate about what they do, that I think that presents some unique challenges. But it also it's neat that people are really in love with what they're doing and the products that they're making and the products that they're selling.
Yeah, I could get on board with that for sure. So definitely. Any last words for our listeners today?
Man, I don't think so. I appreciate you having us on here and taking the time to chat about Loon. It's always fun to recount some of those stories.
Yeah, I absolutely learned a lot. I think our listeners are going to learn a lot about Loon and the history of Loon for sure. So, Brett, you know what? Where can we find you before I let you go?
Yeah, the best place to find us is at our website, loonoutdoors.com. And from there, you can jump off to find us on Loon Live, and to find us on Instagram at Loon Outdoors. But loonoutdoors.com is where it all begins.
You betcha. I'll make sure I definitely put that in the show.
Yeah, and make sure also to, I mean, the best place to find all of our products is for sure your local fly shop. So if I mention anything here that sounds good, then head down to your local fly shop, and if they don't have it, then they can get it for you. So that's for sure the place
I'm sure
to go.
if they don't have new products, they'll be getting them very soon. So
That's right. So September 1st is the official rollout for a lot of new stuff, but inventory will be coming in throughout the fall. So yeah, if there's new stuff, you might have to be a little patient, but we'll get it there as soon as we can.
Absolutely. All right, Brett, I want to thank you, and I want to thank our listeners today for enjoying the show. We've been talking to Brett Zundel from Loon Outdoors. Thanks, Brett.
Greg, thanks a ton.